Buffs just lost 41-10 to the Air Force Academy. It's time for Karl Dorell to go. You're watching Right on Cue Buff Spot.
Running the option on first down. Hagan has it. He has room. He's got one man to beat. Now he pitches to Flanagan, and he may take it all the way. Flanagan's in for the touchdown. He needs 28 yards to get him to 2,000. Here is the give to Salam. Salam to the outside. He's down to the 50. He's got 2,000. He's on his way. 20, 15, 10. Let's it go. He's got three people down there. The ball's up in the air. Caught. Graham is out the football. And Graham has for the end zone. Greenberg, play action, walks one. Got his man. It's Jeremy Roll. Nobody's going to catch him. Third down and 7. Blitz comes. Scooped up by Colorado, and a big man running all the way.
Welcome in, welcome back. Thanks for checking us out. You are watching Right on Cue Buff Spot. I am your host, Tyson Quiller, and thanks again so much for all the support. Last video, up over 400 views. Last time I saw, looks like gaining a little bit of traction here, and I'm hopeful that the reason you're coming here to watch this is because you know generally the media is just bought and paid for out of the pocket, trying to get access to these players, coaches, programs. Listen, Karl Dorell, I'll say whatever you want in the newspaper as long as you give me my interview after the game. Well, you ain't getting that here. I have no affiliation with the university, no affiliation with the football team, and because of that, I'm able to come here and say exactly what you're thinking, exactly what the fans are thinking, completely unfiltered, and we're going to do that today. Colorado just lost 41-10 at the Air Force Academy. This is embarrassing. This is humiliating, and a change must take place. But before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this content with any of the other Buff fans out there that you might find it interesting. And as always, send me your feedback at RightOnQCS on Twitter, rightonqcs@gmail.com. I've been going through some of that feedback, starting to get a little more feedback, and I'm checking it. I'll get back with you, and I appreciate all of the support. So let's just start right here. Coming into this game, you had to start Shrout over Lewis. We said that last week, and now, listen, anybody said Shrout was Peyton Manning or anything like that, okay? But we knew we couldn't win with Lewis. He was a proven commodity. You had to try something new. Now, if you don't agree with that, check this out. Brendan Lewis, in his career, that's 14 full games, has averaged 6.1 yards per pass. Now, let's take a look at some of the top performing quarterbacks week 1 this season by yards per pass. Number 1 with a bullet at UNLV. UNLV. Is that a better football program than Colorado? Doug Broomfield, UNLV quarterback, 14.2 yards per pass. That's more than double Brendan Lewis. You got Tanner Mordecai down there, Stanford, Riley Leonard at Duke, Chance Nolan, Oregon State. And the list goes on. Look at some of these. We'll throw out Stanford. We'll throw out Oregon State. Let me tell you the names of these teams, and you tell me why would a better quarterback go there instead of Colorado? You tell me, okay? UNLV, Duke, UAB, Arkansas State, and Kansas. Every one of their quarterbacks tremendously outperformed Brendan Lewis and what JT Shrout just did yesterday. How is that possible? And every single one of them won in week 1. Okay, the argument was, well, they were losing in the game and they had to throw for a bunch of yards to try and catch up. No, these quarterbacks all won, and some of them beat pretty good competition. Oregon State beat Boise State. Okay, Duke. Temple's not any good, but Duke just beat Northwestern this week. Now, when I brought this up in the past, there's been some contention, lower yards per pass is going to equate to a higher passer rating, right? Well, so here it was week 1. Brendan Lewis, 116th in the country in yards per pass, had a passer rating of 108.6. How about JT Shrout? 128.2. That's higher, isn't it? If I'm doing my math correctly, I believe it is. Also, 78 is higher. So anyways, we'll move on from that. You had to start Shrout. So Shrout gets the start. And I'll give Karl Dorell a lot of credit. Okay, he let him play the whole game. Also, let me just go ahead and give the disclaimer. Yes, it was wet, it was dark, it was foggy, okay, bad weather, I guess. But as they say, it was just as wet, foggy, and dark on Air Force's side of the field. So to start the game off after a touchback and just a real stupid quarterback read play call. They worked in a number of these. I don't understand that. If you're going to do a quarterback read, just put Lewis on the field. He's a much better athlete. The reason you put Shrout on the field was to pass. Anyways, back to the game. Shrout gets the snap in the shotgun. He tries to spin the ball in his hands. Sure enough, he fumbles. Air Force gets the ball at the 25. Next play, fullback up the middle, and you're down 7-0, just like that. Now, the defense did kind of stand tall a bit, holding the Falcons to 2 field goals on their next 2 drives, while the Buffs' offense was kind of sputtering and struggling to get going. The brutal play, though, came with the Buffs already down 13-0, and you're watching it here. Really pretty good pass, I think, from Shrout, but the senior wide receiver, Maurice Bell, tips it up and intercepted. Air Force gets the short field again. That absolutely should have been caught. Then, when you know it, fullback up the middle, again, 20 yards, Buffs were down 20-0, just 2 minutes into the second quarter. I mean, I know there were a lot of quirky plays, but you just cannot start off a game like that, especially against Air Force, a team who makes it so hard to come back on them. That's just a complete lack of discipline and focus. The Buffs did begin to kind of mount a comeback, driving all the way down the field to score on this 25-yard Deion Smith run. And then, after a defensive stop, they marched down the field for a field goal. So, down 20-10 at halftime, and we all kind of scattered to get under cover out of the rain. But, you were kind of thinking like, hey, they really kind of settled in. We may have something cooking here. So Air Force gets the ball to start the second half, and the D gets a big stop around midfield. Then the punt team comes on, check this out, and the center snaps it 5 feet over the punter's head, all the way back to the 15-yard line. I mean, the place was rocking. Well, at least our section was rocking. Now, after getting the ball down to the 1-yard line, this play right here really changed everything. Now, let me read exactly word for word from the NCAA rulebook, okay? The slightest part of the ball touching or being directly over the goal line is sufficient for a touchdown to score. However, only the ball counts, not a player's helmet, foot, or any other part of their body. Look at this. This ball absolutely touched the invisible line that extends upward from the goal line. So the refs reviewed it, and it wasn't confirmed, it wasn't overturned, meaning the call on the field stood. So, in other words, what that means is, had they called it a touchdown on the field, that also would have stood. I mean, that is just terrible. I do have to point out, my dad reminded me of this, that was a Pac-12 referee crew on the field, but that is just horrible. So a game that was about to be 17-20 just completely fell apart. Air Force outscored the Buffs 21-0 in the remainder of the game. I mean, the players just straight up quit on their coaches, for lack of a better term. There were times when the defensive secondary didn't even attempt a tackle when the fullback had gotten up through the middle. Shrout was never able to get the offense going again. And then obviously the situation where he slides too early. He's just, shaky, timid about his knee. I don't know what the deal is, but you got to, time and space, you got to get across that first down line. But I mean it when I say the players quit on their coaches. There are real issues here with this program far beyond the quarterback position. I've heard from kind of internal sources within the program that there was a dramatic blow up in the locker room after the game, fractions demanding Lewis, fractions demanding Shrout, the defense pissed at the offense, and I mean just a general kind of belief amongst the players that, Dorell can't fix this. Now, coming into the game, we knew Air Force not only has one of the best defenses in the nation, but they were the top offense in total yards week 1, and here's what your head coach, Karl Dorell, had to say about his approach towards that.
Karl, you mentioned you and Troy both worked for Mike Shanahan. When you watch his offense, is there a lot of similarities in what you guys are trying to do? And do you see things like, I know what he's doing there because we did that in Denver as well?
Well, particularly in the passing game. He's fitted into his system at Air Force, and it's different than what it is in a pro-style offense. But you see some of the passing concepts are very similar to what, all of us have done in our past. And what makes this so challenging for any team to defend is that everybody's geared about stopping the run, and then all of a sudden there's guys wide open down the field. So that's the challenge of playing with discipline, understanding what your read keys are, understanding when you should be in coverage versus being in filling a gap or, in a perimeter for a run game play. So that's the challenge, is that they do a tremendous job of great balance with actioning everything off of their run game, and all of a sudden it could be a pass. So we have to execute that and show the looks as best we can to give our defense a chance to do an effective job this weekend.
Now, I did get some feedback after the last episode, kind of saying, oh, you're crazy. I had said last week that if we don't get things fixed on the defense, Air Force is going to run for 400 yards on us. And then people saying, oh, you're crazy. They're not going to rush for 400 yards. Well, aside from the fact that they rushed for 582 yards against Northern Iowa last week, sure enough, the Falcons rushed for 443 yards on this Buffalo defense yesterday. Brad Roberts, anybody? I mean, even a unit that we could kind of traditionally count on, the defense was just terrible Saturday. First of all, our D linemen, the D tackles, Naeem Rodman and Jalen Sammy, go 6'2", 305 and 6'6", 325. Okay? Air Force's offensive line starts 4 sophomores, and all 4 of them weigh less than 285 pounds. Why couldn't the D line get penetration? And I'm not saying this like a traditional refrain, like, oh, why didn't they play harder, or whatever, you're bigger, you should have done better, or whatever. Like, it is especially critical in beating Air Force for the D-line to get penetration. In their throwback triple option set, the quarterback meshes first with the fullback, and if he doesn't hand it off, then he and the wingback speed option parallel to the line of scrimmage. If the D-tackles get penetration, they can mess up that mesh point and create sacks and fumbles. If the D-ends on the outside get penetration, they can box in the speed option and force the quarterback to pitch like 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Do you see how this is critical? So we have bigger, stronger, and more experienced guys. Where was that? Also, I couldn't understand why they weren't shifting towards the motion side of the field. Watch this real quick. Are you sensing a theme here? From the bleachers, I keyed on this in the first quarter. Whether it was the fullback dive or the speed option, the play almost always went where the motion man was going. Now, I know you have to honor the middle of the box in case of that fullback dive. But if you're the middle linebacker, Quinn Perry, defensive coordinator Chris Wilson should have told him something to the effect of, when you see that motion man coming from right to left, you move to the outside of the line to the left, and then the outside linebacker to the inside of the field should replace you at middle linebacker. Because they almost never came back the other way in kind of a counter set. Anyways, if you're still hanging in there with me, Buff fans, hang in just a little bit longer. I know this is a tough one to get through, but let me walk you through a little bit of a timeline here. So coming into the season last year, there was a heated quarterback competition. And we didn't really know much about either one. Okay, Brendan Lewis was the returning quarterback who, played pretty decently in the bowl game against Texas. And then you had the Tennessee transfer coming in, JT Shrout. You knew there was kind of a difference in style. Shrout maybe a little more of a pocket passer, Lewis a little more mobile, but they were both relatively unproven. And so the impression we were given from the media was kind of like, well, they're both real good, and we got to decide which one's better, Well, 3 days after that article, JT Shrout suffers a season-ending knee injury, and the decision was made for them. So Brendan Lewis was named the starting quarterback coming into the season. Week 1, Northern Colorado comes to Folsom. Colorado wins 35-7, and Dorell's record at CU moves to 5-3. Hey, not bad. And remember now, I was a pretty big supporter of the Dorell hire initially. You remember he was hired, and then 2 months later, COVID happened. So he's having to navigate all of the COVID stuff with his team that he just barely met. I thought he did a very admirable job of keeping the team together, and they made a bowl game in that COVID-shortened season. But those of us, back to the Northern Colorado game, those of us who actually watched the game could already tell there was a problem at quarterback. Something the coaching staff knew all offseason. Colorado had just 102 passing yards against UNC at home. But, we chalked that up to, well, it's a young new quarterback. He'll get his feet under him, right? Well, the next week, Colorado met Texas A&M at Mile High. And, I mean, they legitimately had a chance to win it. The defense played phenomenally in that one, but ultimately they lost 10-7. The Buffs in that game passed for just 89 yards. But we were excited that they almost won, and A&M was a highly ranked team, so, we chalked that up to A&M has an elite defense, right? Then came week 3. Minnesota comes to Folsom. The Gophers had gone just 3-4 the year before, and would go on to lose to Bowling Green 14-10 the very next week. But on that day in Folsom, they throttled the Buffs. They stomped the Buffs 30-0. Complete humiliation. The Buffs had just 82 yards passing and negative 19 yards rushing. This was when opponents kind of became aware that there was no real pass threat at all that they had to respect. And so they would just stack 8 guys in the box and stop the run. It was after that game that I said, offensive coordinator Darren Cheverini needs to be fired immediately. Well, he was not fired for another 71 days. Then week 4, the Buffs traveled to Arizona State, a team that only managed to play 4 games in 2020. They went just 2-2 in those games. Well, Colorado loses 35-13, and they pass for 67 yards. 67 yards? Are you kidding me? I mean, I can't believe Cheverini still had a job. And that is definitely on Dorell's shoulders for holding on to him all year. I was saying at the time, if you don't make a change, your best skill players, they're going to leave in the transfer portal. I mean, why would they stay? Listen, players like Brendan Rice and Jarek Broussard, they have a real potential, Christian Gonzalez, real potential to maybe make the NFL. But they have a limited window to do so. And so they gotta put stuff on tape that might attract an NFL team to select them in the draft. Why would they stay with a quarterback and an offensive coordinator who can't get them the ball? Through the first 4 games of the season last year, Colorado was 1-3 and had passed for just 340 yards. Last year, there were 6 teams that averaged more than that each game. We did that in 4 games. In the last 8 games of the season, it was kind of up and down, some improvement, but then back to terrible. The Buffaloes had just 69 yards passing at Cal and just 84 yards passing in the final game of the season at Utah. We know now, after this game, that JT Shrout is not all that much better than Brendan Lewis. I totally get why there was a quarterback battle. Unfortunately, it wasn't because they were both good. It was because they were both bad. I tell you all that to tell you this. Coach Dorell knew the team was woefully incapable at the quarterback position since at least August of last year. And we have known that we needed to upgrade at quarterback for 13 months. In that 13 months, 197 quarterbacks entered the transfer portal this offseason. 197. I mean, hell, the number 10 rated quarterback in the portal this offseason was Levi Williams from Wyoming, right up the road. And he transferred to Utah State. I mean, did we even try to reach out to him? Of the 131 quarterbacks playing at the FBS level right now, a full 58 are transfers. That's 44.3% of all quarterbacks on the field. In our own conference, Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, Oregon, USC, Washington, and Washington State are all starting quarterbacks they picked up in the portal last year. This offseason, the Buffs picked up Maddox Kopp from Houston. The former 3-star recruit is just a freshman and has thrown exactly 0 collegiate passes. In total, in that quarterback room, quarterback competition coming into the season, you had Shrout and Lewis and 3 freshmen competing for the job. In 13 months, with more than enough opportunities, Dorell did nothing to upgrade the quarterback position. That's unforgivable. Now I want to move to this, okay? Yogi Roth is a Pac-12 analyst for the Pac-12 Network. They covered the CU-TCU game last week, and he had a quote after the game that ran in the Denver Post, and it goes like this. With all the fans, I would argue, take a deep breath. Okay, Yogi, okay. And if anything, week 2 of a season, support the team that you love even more than you did in week 1. Okay, well, set aside the fact that 95% of the capacity at the stadium was full on week 1 opening game for a team that has done nothing to deserve this kind of fan support. I was down at the Air Force game. There were thousands of us sitting in the rain, cheering loudly. We stayed longer than most of the Air Force fans did as we watched our team get pummeled and beat down. We've had 5 different coaches here in Boulder since Gary Barnett was chased out on a rail. In those 15 seasons, not counting the shortened COVID season, the Buffs have had exactly 1 winning record. 1. 9 of those seasons, the Buffs won just 4 games or less, including each of the last 2. So you tell me, Yogi, I mean, how much longer does this fan base need to be patient for? Especially while we're packing the home stadium, 95+% capacity, and we're traveling on the road, staying longer than the home fans in the rain. No, Karl Dorell needs to be fired today. But the problem with this program is so much deeper than just him. There's a real aversion and anger for the leadership of this program towards NIL, conference realignment, and the transfer portal. I heard the following words come directly from the mouth of Athletic Director Rick George. NIL is a fad, and as far as the transfer portal, we do things the right way here. Well, that's neat, bro. I mean, we're the band playing music as the Titanic goes down. Listen, regardless of how you feel about each of these dynamics, the reality is they're happening, whether you like it or not. So, we can be prideful and arrogant and claim, we're the moral high ones, as USC and UCLA lead for the Big Ten, soon to be followed by Oregon and Washington. We can fan ourselves and pat ourselves on the back as we lose our top 2 wide receivers, our best running back, and 3 of our starting 4 defensive backs in the transfer portal, all while not upgrading at quarterback. No, you, the fan, you should count it as a blessing to get stomped out at Air Force because, darn it, we did it the right way. If you're watching this and you happen to be a booster, or you donate to the school, you have any sway whatsoever, Karl Dorell needs to be fired right now, okay? But then your responsibility begins. You need to reach out to Rick George immediately. Cobble together as much money and resources as you can. We need to get serious about a coaching search. And we need to get serious about NIL. Okay, collectives, putting players together with local businesses. I like what Blake Street Tavern and Montana Lemonious Craig have going on. We need more and more and more of that. So, I'll leave you with something you're going to enjoy. Coming into this weekend, Nebraska was 214-0 all time when scoring 35 points at home. Well, not anymore. They lost to Georgia Southern at home, and Scott Frost is now out of a job. There's always something good to take away from every weekend of the college football season. So, tell me what you think. Where did I get it right? Where did I get it wrong? I have a feeling this one's going to kind of get some blood boiling, so, as always, send me your feedback. At RightOnQCS on Twitter, RightOnQCS@gmail.com. Stay strong, keep the faith. You have been watching Right on Q Buff Spot. I'm your host, Tyson Quiller, and as always, until next time, go Buffs.
Running the option on first down. Hagan has it. He has room. He's got one man to beat. Now he pitches to Flanagan, and he may take it all the way. Flanagan's in for the touchdown. He needs 28 yards to get in the 2,000. Here is the give to Salam. Salam to the outside. He's down to the 50. He's got 2,000. He's on his way. 20, 15, 10. Let's it go. He's got 3 people down there. The ball's up.